Paul, we're recording.
Well, thank you, Mark. Hello, everybody. This is Paul Gehrig, and welcome to Mark My Words. Thank you for joining us yet. But again, if you're coming back and if you are a newcomer, we welcome you wholeheartedly. This is a podcast that concerns what we basically wish to think about when we're dealing with maybe alternate realities, alternative paradigms, conflicting paradigms. We've spoken about some of Mark's literature in the past, especially as it pertains to rut management. Most of this is based on some of Mark's beliefs that are published within his literature and everything. And what we wanted to do, and we're still doing at this point, is basically discuss a what if scenario. In particular, we've been kind of leaning toward, in our first series, we were leaning toward what if we're all wrong? And where does it go from there? And how did we get here in this kind of little semi predicament in the first place? Mark, I'm going to pass this over to you. Once again, here's Mark Cornelius, the author of Rut Management. And Mark, what do you think about this? How did we get where we are?
Thanks, Paul. And you and
It's deep.
yeah, I just want to share the story of how we even came to this discussion, looking at the critical thinking aspect of all of this. And this is the fun and also the challenge of critical thinking. It challenges you to take that paradigm apart, every one of them, every single one of them, and say, let's rethink this. Let's not just assume that something is the way it is because we want it to be that way. Inductive thinking. We want to really know what the causation is of things and why, and not just what we think, but how we think. So that all sounds like heady stuff. Paul and I were sitting around talking about it, said, this is, this can go really deep and we'll lose our entire audience. Or, you know, just Paul and I sitting here talking to one another. Wouldn't that be nice? And it's great. But we thought, let's start throwing out some of these challenges in a way that might inspire people, uh, might get some real kickback. And by kickback, I don't mean just throwing out things that are going to challenge for the sake of argument, but really getting people to think about their ideas and their ideals and where they came from in the first place. So let's start there. And this is based on a subtitle of one of my other books, Unmeasuring. What if we are all wrong? And then a follow up question to that: what if there is a right? Now, can that happen? I mean, is that a even a paradox that can exist, or is it is it a conflict of thought? Wait a minute, if we are all wrong, but there is a right, how can that be? So they're right there. I hope that the smoke is starting to come out of the ears of some of you out there.
I can almost feel it coming out of a few of our listeners or our audience here. I know it has been for me, and this is the kind of stuff that'll drive you to have smoke coming out of your ears if you let it get too complex. We're going to try to keep it simple, folks, and
Yeah.
probably in terms of our things, please keep in mind that in your soul searching adventures, and certainly in mine, from my past experience and everything, I know that some of the problems that I've run up against that feel most complex in my life have had fairly simple answers once I kick it back a little bit, take it back a gear, and just say, now, wait a minute, the simplest solution may be the best road. And as you've seen in rut management, if you're familiar with the book, if you're familiar with some of Mark's uh, lectures and other presentations, you'll also remember that in that particular element, there are some things that by staying the course, you might find the simple way, the straight line through, or if there is a curve or a hard left or right, as there seem to be quite a few in right now in the world in general, but in our lifetime, right now we're experiencing some pretty rough and bumpy rides. And so at this point in the game, keeping things simple may be the best way. And sometimes just staying the course and finding that little simple place can be a necessary thing to find out, is there one right? Now we're probably going to have to come in, dig in, and maybe introduce other terminology here, especially when
Yeah.
it comes to unmeasuring.
Well, and I'm
And
going to start with one, as a matter of fact, because
good.
you just segued so nicely into something we haven't even dropped in there. And that is a phrase from way back in antiquity, Occam's razor. And if anyone will look that up, it's easy to Google. I'm not even going to spell it for you. You'll find it. But Occam's razor states the simplest solution is usually the correct one. And that's paraphrasing, but that has come through time and survived and is so right. Now, how do you find that simple solution? And is that always true? That's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to strip away the veneer on this very nice, highly polished table we have made. Yeah, we've built up this nice table with rut management and then going into marginalized and unmeasuring and even some of the other books. But the idea is to say, okay, we've built this nice platform. Is this the platform we want to base everything on? Because what if we're wrong? you know? So everyone out there is going, wait a minute, you're not supposed to say that because you've just got us to trust you and all that stuff. Believe me, by the time we get through with this, it's going to be very clear that what I'm most interested is, again, in not what you or I or Paul thinks, but how you and I and Paul think. So we will get to that point very easily, and this will become I believe, a second nature for each of us. Um, Now, that all being said, let's start with a simple fact. There is each one of us, there is all of us, and then somewhere there's a greater good. Now, some of us might position and say the greater good is all of us getting together and all of us coming to agreement. Good luck with that. And I don't even believe in luck, by the way. I say that phrase nonchalantly. I'm not a luck guy. But what I do believe is that there is a greater good. And we're going to explore that greater good. How did it come to exist? How did it come to be? How can we trust and verify that that has happened? We'll throw out some really odd terms out there that will help us with that. Again, this story is evolving as we go. As Paul and I talked about this, we said, you know, let's make sure people are doing this the right way, not just taking our word for it. I want you to take the word for it. And the word is something that we're going to explore as well.
Wonderful. And I'm glad you mentioned that about the word, because when we were talking about perhaps maybe going in another direction earlier this week when we were getting together, where do we go from here? Several came up,
Yes.
and we kind of just decided on the fact that what we needed to do for everyone, including ourselves in this exercise, is remind ourselves that one word that we have to do is practice.
Yeah.
And part of a practice is sometimes we have to get tangled up to get untangled. And if we practice some of the things that we do, working along and everything, perhaps we'll find getting to a simpler answer or to a singular answer. And I know Mark, you've spoken about this in several of your books in terms of how one can be tangled up, run into some things, maybe what we would call,
A pit.
maybe what many people call a rut. and not understand that there may be a bigger definition to the term rut. So we're going to try to straighten some things out in this adventure ourselves as we go through this second season of our journey. And Mark, you've done a pretty good job with rut management, at least in my opinion. I believe that that's one of the most insightful looks at some of the principles that may be part or may become part of our practice. So if you care to elaborate on some of those things, and as you mentioned, the bigger picture, please do so.
Okay, just why don't you just lay that one on me there? So, first of all, I'm going to do something here. There are a lot of things you can already pick up on through our YouTube channel, and that's right here. So, as you're as you're looking through this, of course, you're already on YouTube if you're listening to this. But you'll also be able to connect with us in some different ways. Email, of course, if you want to send me an email, I'm glad to converse with you that way. It's kind of what we used to call the longhand way. But if you also want to check out the resources that we so often refer to, uh, rut management, looking at marginalized is a book, a very provocative book, and the title might seem to you misleading, but I think you'd be very impressed with the challenge of it. Welfare Christianity, and then of course there's Unmeasuring, and all of these books challenge us to look at our world in a different way, an honest and fresh way, without demanding answers. I am much more interested in your questioning to find your own results. And then we can discuss those along the way. That's the whole idea. So go to www.rutmanagement.com and you will find incredible things, I believe, I hope, there that will challenge you. And you can also go to Facebook and we can have a conversation there. So I'm just talking about those things on the open scale. Now, with rut management, we talked about that there is a origin for each of us and there's a destination for each of us, and along the way there's a path. Oh, sounds so simple, doesn't it? But we get off the path so often because we think we want to try something different, and then we get to thinking, oh, okay, we're in a rut and that's a bad thing. Truth is, rut might be a good thing. What if it is? What if what we're really talking about when we're stuck is being stuck in a pit where we just can't seem to get out of it and can't seem to move forward, backwards, sideways, or up or down? That's the challenge. The rut is actually leading you on the path you should be on, and it's simply finding the adventure in that. Now, marginalized is another book that kind of led from that, which is, I sometimes I feel marginalized. Others might tell me I am a marginalizer, not the marginalizee. So here's a challenge for you. What if we, each and every one of us, are marginalized and also do our own marginalizing? What does that tell us about ourselves? And what can we do, if anything, to change that or to at least be aware of it? Unmeasuring leads forth from there. It's a way of demarginalization. Wow, I just maybe made up a word. I don't know.
I think it works.
It works.
And yeah, and also that the one of the elements that you've got that is kind of a glue in between both of those that keeps things together and hopefully will enlighten all of us at some point in our adventures is the art of listening
The art of listening.
and staying focused at that point, because there is a part of that practice as we practice our listening technique, how well we can actually communicate comes into play. Might even be a little bit of a slight improvement in terms of the more we listen, right? Or the quieter we become. I think it's the saying, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. That very same thing. And we might even have to get into some of those little discussions about how that kind of takes place. I know we spoke in detail about some listening techniques in our first series, but revisiting that with a different and reflecting on a different with a different nature involved, there might be just a way to go. What do you think there, Mark?
Well, if what I hear you saying, Paul, is
Good.
that listening is a lost art. And if I'm hearing you correctly, and tell me if I'm not, that when we listen, we tend to listen with an agenda in mind, as opposed to listening simply to understand the person on the other side of the conversation, or the other persons on the side of the conversation. Understand them, uh, and not try to judge them. What two, by the way, paradigm breaking concepts, I believe, in that. By the way, did I hear you correctly?
You did.
Okay. I wanted to make sure.
You were actually listening, and I was actually listening and thinking at the same time. So my part of the exercise may have been a little bit iffy. Instead of trying to think about my response, I was probably uh, going off someplace else, thinking of the next place you were going to go because we've had this discussion. And it might be rather interesting to see where you are going.
I am going toward the two paradigm breaking concepts of, well, a paradigm breaking concept of contract versus covenant. And people are going to go, okay, I know what a contract is, and I think I know what a covenant is. Aren't they the same, one and the same? And what would be the answer to that, Paul?
Well, I would say no, they're not. You need to basically be listening to Mark, and you
Okay.
need to be listening to what we're doing in our what if scenario, because what we had spoken about before is that there is an enduring factor that goes along to a covenant. We're not talking about a time type of endurance. We're talking about something that goes larger, as Mark had kind of alluded to earlier about common good, about certain things that will be held in belief and be basically held together, regardless of what quote unquote agreements we may have with one another. Mark, I'll pass it over to you. I'm thinking that that's pretty much.
Well, we nailed it right there. I mean, that's, well, I say we nailed it. People might be scratching their heads, but we'll wait for reactions on this and then we'll know. But um, all this alludes to, we are designing something that we want participation in. And be patient with us as we pursue this in our ruts. Walk along or rut along with us, and know that is not a deer hunting term. No, no, no. This is a different kind. Rut with us on the rut path, and we will find together, I believe, I hope, some new answers for each of us. We will look at it from a critically thought out, paradigm busting idea, and then come back and say, okay, let's put the paradigms back together and see if they fit differently. And in doing that, we will be using a deductive and inductive process all along the way. So,
That's excellent, Mark. I also believe that what we've done in that first series is set us up for this next one where folks can basically utilize and participate. So, as Mark had requested, I'm requesting as well that we participate in a way that is exercising patience and hopefully we'll be able to find a better understanding among us. And Mark, dare we speak about the web channels or any of your websites or anything again, or it's been up
Oh,
there for a while?
sure. It's still up there, isn't it? Is it still
Yes.
showing? Okay, good. And then also, you can check out our other podcasts. And gosh, I guess I could take you there. And we could go to other podcasts. And let's see here. Let me get to that. Look at you're looking at all my personal files. I feel so open bookish right now. I don't know. Okay, so one of the things you might want to do, and I'll pull up. Here we go. Bear with me, folks, because we really want to do this right for you. Okay, we already showed you the Mark My Words program, but right here, hold on, there she are.
Oh,
Okay,
there you go.
Watchmen on the Wall is another podcast that I'm participating in with another dear friend, Sam Clark. And this one is just an exercise in the exploration of a more spiritual nature, but it ties in with what's happening right now in our world. No, I am not the doomsdayer. I'm everyone out there going, oh no, he's another one of those guys. I am not the doomsdayer. However, I think it's really important for us to watch from the wall what's going on around us. Look out over the horizon as they did in ancient times to things that are unseen. And as a matter of fact, there's a common phrase, and I'm not even going to tell you where it originates, but the we do not look to things that are seen, for those are transient, but we look to things that are unseen because they are eternal. So there's a there's a little bit of some bait thrown out there for you. Is there an eternal thing that we're looking for?
That's right. And just as Mark said, that may be a little bit of bait. It may be a hint, a clue.
Hmm.
We've certainly found some solutions to what direction we'd like to follow in this particular path. And Mark, thank you very much. I think we're kind of running toward the end of our clock here, aren't we?
We are. So I was just leaving up the YouTube grab there for anyone who wants to picture shot this or whatever. But in the meantime, all I'll say is this Paul and Maya's journey is designed to be for anyone out there who is willing to explore. We are not putting any kind of a faith-based twist on this, uh, but we will be talking about faith, and we want to make sure that this is something that people have a consideration of, even if you don't believe in something that you can't see. Please don't marginalize me by taking that away from me. So there's
There you go.
there's that other concept. But we're going to challenge us. We're going to challenge even our own beliefs. And as Paul said, we're wrapping this up in time. I just want to wish you all well. I want to encourage you to write emails, send up smoke signals, whatever it is. And Facebook, we will answer and we will engage. And
That
so
sounds like a plan.
I think it is a plan. It's the only one I got.
Well, I guess we better wrap this one up. And for those of you who have been listening, those of you who have chosen to watch, thank you very much for attending this presentation as well. And once again, as Mark has urged, just basically get in touch. If you allow yourself to question yourself. And I know certainly that's easier said than done because many of us think that we've got all the answers. I know I certainly do from time to time. And I realize later that I don't know as much as I thought I did. And I would love to learn more. So at any rate, thank you
Yeah.
for visiting us, and hope to see you again soon.